Welcome back to Pondering with the Stars. My name is Kenneth Campbell.
And I'm Brittany Howard.
And today we're going to be discussing a star, one of my favorites, Vega. But to start, we're going to go over the quote that I love from The Lion King, Simba. Let me tell you something that my father told me. Look at the stars. The great kings of the past look down on us from those stars.
I love that quote.
Me too. So, I think that this quote is great because it does definitely tell you that in the past, many people looked at the stars, and since they didn't know what they were, they made their own stories for them.
Yeah, I love the idea of looking at the stars and being able to explain something that we may not understand.
Yeah, and we still do that kind of nowadays with astrology as well, which a lot of people follow, which I think is pretty cool.
Absolutely. So today we're going to be discussing one of my favorite stars, Vega.
We're going to be talking about the story of this star and the history behind it.
I honestly can't wait to learn more about this star. I don't think I know much about this one specifically.
Me too, but before we jump into the details about this star, Vega, let's talk about the story of this star.
So, this star has been looked at for a long time in history, and surprisingly, Vega isn't its only name.
I think that's a very cool aspect when looking into its history. So the names that it has been called include Vega, W-E-G-U-H, which means descending eagle in Arabic, which over time, the W evolved into a V.
One more name that we can look at is that it was called Alpha Lyra, which is the biggest star in the northern constellation Lyra.
How interesting is that? Learning about how stars were viewed and talked about before we were even born?
Yeah, it's kind of strange to look at as well, if you think about it. Like, speaking of how they were viewed, there have also been many stories that describe Vega in the night sky.
Really? I mean, I may know a few stories myself. Do you care to share one you're familiar with?
I would. I love Greek mythology, and in Greek mythology, Vega was also known as the harp star, because Vega's constellation Lyra was a harp played by the Greek musician Orpheus. In the legend, when he played the harp, neither god nor mortal could turn away.
That's really awesome.
Yeah, I like the idea that gods and mortals were kind of put on the same playing field, so both of them were drawn to these beings or these stars, and they couldn't look away. They were kind of made equal.
Yeah, it's also interesting because I read the Odyssey last year, and looking at those gods, you can see them, and that since they're immortal and since they're better and more beautiful than everybody else, they're kind of irresistible.
Yeah, so again, this kind of puts them like on that same playing field, kind of makes every being look small.
Thanks for sharing that with me. I've only really heard about the Chinese and Japanese versions.
Alright, let's hear it.
Okay, so, in China's story of Vega, there is a forbidden romance between the goddess Xenu, which is Vega, and a farm boy, Niu Lang, which is Altair, who are separated by the celestial river. They can only see each other on the 7th night of the 7th moon, when a bridge of magpies form across the celestial river. This story is also seen in Japanese stories during the festival Tanabata, I think that's how you say it, where the goddess Orheim, which is also Vega, falls in love with the mortal Hikabushi, which is Altair, and the dad forbids them to see each other, separating them with the celestial river in the sky.
It's really interesting that both China and Japan have very similar stories about this, like, forbidden love, but they're different cultures.
It is, but, they're also separated in a way, so it makes me think that they sort of made them based off each other, but they're not the exact same thing.
Again, so looking at the sky and making your own interpretation, but maybe using the things that you've heard of before.
But it's interesting that they're looking at the things in the sky that are separated and come back together, and they're like, this is romance.
Yeah, it does. I mean, it's kind of an encouraging outlook on life, I guess.
Yeah. So now that we've learned about the very interesting mythology of Vega, let's dive into where we can find this star right here in Connecticut.
Awesome. So you're telling me I could walk outside during the night and find this star?
Well, anyone can. That's what's so cool about stargazing. I love to gaze. But first, let's talk about where it's located.
All right. Let me tell them.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. So, like how on a map you can use coordinates to find a location, in the night sky there are also similar coordinates using right ascension and declination. Right ascension is the longitude in the sky, and declination is the latitude in the sky.
Wait, so what's the right ascension and declination of Vega?
Well, I was just getting to that. The right ascension is 18 hours, 36 minutes, and 56.3 seconds, while the declination is 38 hours, 47 minutes, and 1 second. It's also pretty important to note how far away it is, which is 25 light years.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. So I've been really interested in these coordinates and how they align with the sky. So could you help me figure out how to find Vega in Connecticut now?
Of course. So first, you need to try and find the Big Dipper. This is pretty easy, as it's the constellation that makes up the 7 brightest stars in the sky. You want to look high in the northwest to the sky to look for this. So to find it, you would look at the second star in the handle of the Big Dipper, which is Thuban. Then look overhead Thuban, which would be Vega. It is also the brightest star in the constellation Lyra. The best time to find it is mid-evening in May, but it can be seen any time of the year.
Awesome. So when we're done with this, we can go look, right?
I mean, we can try, but it's still light out.
Awesome. Well, later, I'm definitely going to make him show me, guys.
Alright, okay. Also, the other interesting thing I think we should take a look at is the absolute and apparent magnitudes of Vega.
Yes, let's do that. Okay, so the absolute magnitude of Vega, which is how bright the star would be from a standard distance, is 0.58 V, which stands for visual filter. For anyone who doesn't know, standard distance is 10 parsecs, or about 32.5 light years. The apparent magnitude of Vega, which is how bright the star would be from Earth, is 0.3 V.
This compares to the Sun, which the Sun's absolute magnitude is 4.83 V, and apparent magnitude is negative 26.74 V. These numbers show how much brighter Vega is than the Sun, with 4.25 V less than the Sun in absolute magnitude. This is interesting, because even though the Sun would seem brighter in apparent magnitude, it's really not. It just seems as if it's brighter because it's closer to the Earth.
Huh. Lots of interesting things in today's episode, huh?
Well, it's not my fault. Stars are just amazing.
Alright, so are we ready to talk about spectra?
Britt, our listeners don't even know what spectra is. Go ahead and tell them.
Okay, so basically it's the way that astronomers classify stars.
When she says classify stars, we classify them by what they're made out of and the color that they appear to have. It tells us the type of stars that they are.
Exactly. So the spectra of Vega is A0V, which is dominated by hydrogen, H alpha, H beta, and H gamma absorption lines, which are the lines that show how gas from the outer layer of the star absorbs the light from the thermal black body spectrum, and this gives it a bluish tint.
To add on, the thermal blackbody spectrum is a spectrum of light emitted by any heated object.
Exactly. And do you want to tell them how Vegas's spectra compares to the sun's?
Sure, so this compares to the sun's spectrum, which is G2V. The G2 spectral type means it is yellowish white in color, and the luminosity class V means it is hydrogen burning main sequence star. Moving on to our next section, we will be discussing where Vega fits on the HR diagram.
Yes, the HR diagrams are really cool, and I'm excited to see how this star fits into it.
Well, first of all, an HR diagram is a chart that shows the relationship between a star's temperature and its luminosity.
Oh, and don't forget, it also tells us what stage of life the star is in.
That's one of the best parts. I'm going to be putting the HR diagram of Vega on the screen now.
So according to Britannica, this shows that Vega is positioned in the main sequence, which compares to the Sun, which is near the middle of the main sequence. This main sequence is the nuclear fusion of hydrogen and helium.
So in my honors astronomy class, nuclear fusion is pretty cool because it can go from hydrogen to helium, but then it can go further on from helium to other heavier elements. I'm forgetting them right now, but it's pretty cool because then eventually it stops and then it shows the star's stage in life.
Nice. I think it's interesting because I think a lot of people don't recognize that stars have different stages of life, but it makes sense if it's burning energy.
Yeah, because just looking at the stars, you can't really see the stage of life it's in, but if you dive deeper and actually look deeper, then you can.
Right, absolutely.
So, looking at the HR diagram, we can also determine the star's size now, and what its lifetime is going to look like. So, it's only 455 million years old. And since it is burning through its hydrogen fuel at a fast rate, it is expected to become a red giant in 500 million years. Unlike the sun, which is 4.57 billion years old, which is a long time, and will take 5 billion years to become a red giant. Vega is 40 times bigger than the sun, but is still not big enough to explode as a supernova, meaning it will still die as a white dwarf, just like the sun.
Wait, did I hear you right? Did you say it's 40 times bigger than our sun?
Yeah, you did.
That's crazy.
It really is, but it's so fun to think about.
Yeah, but it does make sense why its hydrogen fuel is burning at a fast rate.
Because of how big it is?
Exactly, that's what I was thinking.
The other incredible thing is to look at the entire lifespan of both of these stars.
Why is that so remarkable?
Well, compared to Vega, the lifespan of Vega is 1 billion years, which compares to the sun's lifespan, which is 10.
Well, I'm sort of confused. So why is that remarkable?
It's interesting how Vega has 1/10 the lifespan of the sun, and yet is so much bigger than it. But it also makes sense because the bigger it is, the more fuel it needs.
I guess that's just how stars work. Now that we've learned about everything we need to know about Vega, can we do something fun with this information?
Well, what exactly were you thinking?
Okay, I have an idea. How about this? We make up a scenario, kind of like Simba did with the quote that we started with at the beginning.
That sounds like fun. What kind of scenario?
Okay, so let's think about what it would be like to communicate with that planet. Be sure to take into consideration how far away your star is. Also, how would you want our civilization to be seen by life on that planet?
Well, I'll start with how we would communicate with that planet, from Earth. Well, what I've seen from ways that we've done this before is that we could send out a satellite with a simple message that any intelligent organism could understand. I'm not sure what that would be though, but yeah, any other ideas?
I think that's interesting. I think we definitely need to send something out to let other planets know that we're here, and I like what you said about making it something that people can understand. I think my thoughts go to like, what is the next step when they do get in contact with us? And so I think I would say send out a message, kind of it sounds so silly.
Maybe like a picture, maybe?
Or a picture, or like something like summarizing existence on Earth,
How would
which
we
sounds
summarize
it sounds crazy, but
because
like
they're not gonna understand.
But like
English.
I'm thinking like something that says like we're organisms that survive off oxygen intake and carbon dioxide outtake, and that we need water to survive and nourishment. But then also, I mean, we might have to talk about the environment as well, right?
I mean, yeah, I was also going to touch on that with how our environment's going now. So, going on to how our civilization would be viewed, I would like to think that we're a very intelligent planet, making our planet a very modernized place. I would like people to view our planet as advanced, but also sustainable, which isn't happening right now, which touches on your environment thing. Although our planet being viewed as sustainable is a different idea. But we definitely need to still work on bringing our greenhouse gas emissions further down.
Yeah, absolutely. And if we're thinking about other planets sending beings to our planet, we would want to sustain them, hoping that they would be able to be sustained on the same things we are, right?
Yeah, and I mean, we could bring us to them as well, but since we ourselves can't sustain ourselves currently, I think that would be unfair for us to do that to them.
That's true. And this is getting kind of more theoretical than probably what we wanted to discuss. But if they're able to communicate with us, that means they're probably maybe even more technologically advanced than we are. So since travel to all these places takes light years, maybe they'd be able to get to us faster.
Yeah, and I'm assuming they'd want to build some sort of connection with us as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Well, this has been an awesome discussion. I like that we learned some things, but also we got to hypothesize and think about some new things. So thank you guys so much for listening to our podcast, Pondering with the Stars.
It was really great to talk about Vega with you, to end this podcast on a positive note and something that you were all able to ponder. In the words of Neil Gaiman, are we human because we gaze at the stars, or do we gaze at them because we are human? Pointless, really. Do the stars gaze back? Now, that's a question.